Hey all, this is 012 Boku, and
This is Mr. Jackass himself, Jarek.
we're coming at you with another episode review of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. And to let you guys know, we are down, after this episode, we are down to just 2 more left, and I will not spoil the surprise, but me and Jarek talked about doing some sort of comparison. If you guys know from how I told you a long time ago how I was going to do this, when I had this thought in my head, you know, if you've watched any of my older videos from 2-3 years ago, believe it or not. But if you don't, hey. And also, before we began, I wanted to say a quick thank you to all our new fan base that we have grown. Thank you for now 60 of you. I know some people probably think, well, 60 subscribers, that's not a lot. Well, to me it is, because I didn't think we were going to get that. And to all the views you've been giving me and Jarek and to our channel, you know, and everything else, and for sticking with me so long, if you guys have been there from day one, when I started this damn thing, before Jarek even came, thank you very much, guys. You're awesome. We thank you for that. I just wanted to give a little quick shout out for that, because I didn't think we'd get to 60 so quick. I thought it would take another year or two, personally.
Hey, I'm just glad we're still on. Have you seen how many bitches have been kicked off of YouTube?
I've seen it, and I think you've told me about some of them, Jarek, but again, that's the algorithm, and again, if we also get the axe, you guys know we've said it as well, we'll go to other pastures too. There's Rumble and a couple other places. TikTok will not be one of them, so just going to say you will not see me or him on TikTok. Yeah. Whether by ourselves or together, I'm not going there, and I'm pretty sure Jarek don't either.
I got too much freedom in my veins to be on TikTok.
Hell, I'll come out and say it. I don't care if we get demonetized or in trouble for it. Screw China. Maybe not the people, but the Chinese government. Let me refrain that. Screw the Chinese government. So there you go.
China.
But yeah, if you guys can't... Oh, wait. I already did show you this. So yeah, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I already showed that. But either way, on the episode, it basically leaves off where it began, where Envy goes into the prison cell to find Marco dead. And sadly, one thing Envy discovers, which we can't tell what it is, but you hear Envy in Japanese, in both Japanese and English, a little more understandable in English, that there's an audible gasp, where I think in English he went, huh, instead of like that, like, you know, the audible gasp they did in Japanese. In English we did the huh, so, you know, you can tell something was wrong because they focused on a dog collar. I won't get into that yet, but that's near the end of the episode. But we go from that to finishing up the conversation between Riza Hawkeye and Edward, to where, you know, Edward's thanking Hawkeye for telling him the truth about Ishval. Is probably as disturbing and weird as that was to find out, but he knows the truth. He's moving on. He also gives Hawkeye a piece of advice to tell Colonel Mustang to watch out, because Scar is still out there on the loose, because they saw him, and she actually does take that into advisement, and then they go their own way to where Edward runs into Alphonse.
Plus, he also tells her, I heard you got reassigned to being the Führer's personal assistant. Doesn't that effectively make you a hostage? And she's like, and I think in Japanese she's like, well, that just means it's easier for me to shoot him in his sleep. Whereas in American it's like, well, depending on your perspective, you could you just have to look at it as it'll be easier for me to kill him in his sleep. Minor little changes, but I do kind of prefer the English version better. Yeah,
which there was a few of them, and we'll probably get to some of those comparisons here in just a moment, because they'll be coming up really quick. Basically, you have Alphonse and Edward talking about, you know, how, Edward, long story short, because we don't get to see it, but Edward tells Alphonse everything he learned, and Alphonse is even shocked to hear it. And, you know, they're going like, you know, we never thought or talked about what we were going to do when we become human again. What are you going to do, Alphonse? Well, I'm going to have some of Winry's apple pie and then, you know, go from there. And then he asks Edward, what he was going to do. Edward said the same thing. I never really thought about it. I've just been focused on getting our bodies back. I guess I'll call our teacher and, Granny, and Granny being Panaka Rockbell, for those who may not remember, but that's Panaka Rockbell. And, tell him that, hey, we're doing all right. And basically both brothers then reminisce with Alphonse saying, they're all going to be so happy that we'll be back to normal. And they're like, yeah, and they both agree. And it's sort of like they didn't lay it on as thick. Well, not to say that they laid it on thick as Japanese, but it was like, yes, 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 yes. That's how it was in Japanese. Like, yes, yes, yes.
Well, like when Alphonse gave his answer, there was definitely much more of like a childish exuberance, which you would have to imagine he probably hasn't tasted anything in a long time.
Yeah.
But with like the English version, it was definitely kind of more of like a subdued cuteness to it.
Yeah.
And also, really, really nice that attention to detail that would be the first thing on his mind is, I'm going to get to taste food again. And it was also really neat to see that, like, Edward's first thing is, I'm going to tell the two people who have effectively raised us for so long, thank you for helping us get this far.
Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, from there, they actually start to think of the alchemy, because they also revisit with Father how they weren't able to use their alchemy, and neither was any other alchemist in the area. But they again reminisce how Scar and Mei Chang were able to use their alchemy, and they realized with Mei Chang and or Scar relies the keys, so they want to find again, I don't think they're fully trusting of Scar, so they want to find Mei Chang. They call Dr. Knox, and in Japanese it was a little different, like in English, Vic Mignogna goes, where's the little girl, but in Japanese it's like, where's the little bean sprout? Basically, I don't know.
And I love that too. I love that for the first time we hear him actually use the word bean sprout and not get angry.
Yeah, well, because he's calling somebody else short, not himself.
It's just so adorable.
Self-conscious.
It's like, where's the little bean sprout? Oh, that's what that feels like.
Yeah. And, and in both versions, even though we're making another difference in the language comparison, Dr. Knox admits that he doesn't know where she's gone. She just left, and they're like, well, crap. Who knows what's going on with that now? And believe me, let's see. I think I wrote it down here. Oh yeah, and then they're trying to basically go to the next part of the plan, which I think was they were heading back. Yeah, they were gonna head back to their apartment in the military lounge first to get a few things, and then head to Dr. Knox. Believe it or not, though, before we get there, we have everybody of Roy Mustang's group sort of meeting up for one more time. You have Hammond's Breda meet with Jean Havoc. Jean Havoc still can't walk, but Hammond's Breda gives him some weights to basically, keep him in good shape, because he's like, hey, I'm going west, I'm going to try that Western food, but hey, you know what, while you're here, you keep in shape, because none of them are giving up on Jean Havoc. They're saying, when you're ready, we need you ready, so that's why he gave him the weights, and,
this is a kind of a nice attention to detail with how soldiers think. None of them say, like, none of them ever say something to him to the effect of, like, we don't want you getting lazy when you're out of the military, because this would be a military career. No, they say, we're giving you these so that you don't let yourself get out of shape. We need you to keep an eye on things here while we're off on our new assignments.
Yeah.
Which is really sweet, because soldiers do that, It's like, you never want to tell your friend you're out of the game, you're not going to be able to do this anymore. Because it really is just a heartbreak. It's like when you're a cop, you're always a cop. You can't stop seeing things that you know about. If you're a firefighter, you never stop looking for those fire hazards. So it's really sweet that, she has this attention to detail that we're not going to say this, we're gonna phrase it in a way where you're still on the team, because to them you're never not on the team. You're always part of that family.
Yeah, and then to the same point, we see Sergeant Kane Fury, and then Lieutenant Fallman show up, and they're basically white talk with each other. Vato Fallman was going to give Roy Mustang back the chessboard, and then Kane Fury was spending a little bit of time with Hawkeye's dog, Hayate, giving him, I don't know why he was giving him a chicken leg. You don't give a dog a chicken leg, but hey, I mean, he was giving him the meat, not the bone, but, like basically sort of saying their farewells to each other as well, saying where they're going. Also giving off, they don't say it as much as Breda and Jean Havoc were, but basically both giving off the idea that they're not giving up too, they basically end their conversation with, I'll see you around, Fallman. Yeah, see you around when we meet again, Kane. So them not giving up either. And then last but not least, you see Riza Hawkeye going to the office, basically collecting a few books before heading to the Fuhrers, and she gives a idea that, to Roy that, hey, Scar's back, I was told to pass this along, and he's like, okay, I'll have to watch out. And the usual thing between them two, don't get yourself killed, keep up with your duties, yeah, I don't want to do that to you, because then you get all angry, and she's like, but just, take care of yourself. So the usual stuff we've heard before, because we know how, but what I love about it is it reiterates how dedicated this group is, and believe it or not, he sets up the chessboard to where, everybody was a chess piece. Fury was the pawn, Fallman was the rook, Breda was the bishop, Jean Havoc was the knight, and then obviously Riza Hawkeye the queen, and then he was the king. Funnily enough, though, he doesn't lay off his piece. He unscrews the king piece, and there's a piece of paper inside.
And the weird thing is, if I remember, that's the same chess piece he was playing with the guy at his old military command.
Grumman, yeah, Commander Grumman.
And it's also another neat historical reference, because they actually used to do that. They would hollow out chess pieces, leave notes in them. And, since you couldn't have, there were certain things you couldn't have for recreation or entertainment in the military, but you could have chess games. Mm-hmm. And actually it was kind of encouraged, too, because, chess is the game of kings, the game of war. So it's actually kind of cool that Romi Paku,
That's the voice actor, Hiromu Arakawa.
Hiromu Arakawa, would include that because they actually did stuff like that.
Yeah.
And again, the pieces of, each of his friends, with... I kind of feel sad for that little dirty guy that he's the pawn, but hey, someone's got to be.
Yeah.
But,
Game Theory, yeah.
But yeah, Fallman being the rook makes sense. Fury being the
pawn.
Havoc.
Havoc being the knight.
Kind of makes sense because in the flashback scene, he's like, I may not be the smartest guy, but I can handle a rifle.
Yeah.
And then the other guy
Breda being the bishop.
Yeah, because, you see how their personalities kind of correlate. Bishops, Breda's definitely not, the brightest, but he is very loyal, and he's kind of definitely a devotee of, what Roy Mustang wants to do. Rook is definitely a mountain of a guy. He looks like he could really handle his defense well. Havoc is, again, he's the attacker. He's the forward man. He's the front guy. He's not the brightest, but he can handle himself in a fight. And then you have the little kid guy. He's got a good heart, but he's got a long way to go. And of course, Hawkeye is the queen for many reasons, and Mustang's the king, or he thinks he's the king. You'll find out.
Trying to be the Führer, which Führer means king, and ha. But, as that sets up, we actually have this part where, Colonel Mustang, sorry, I forgot a minute. Colonel Mustang is on his way to a special place, which we'll see in a moment, and he's all dolled up in a nice business suit. And believe it or not, he runs into the Elric brothers to where, they're driving there. And Roy Mustang brings up, Edward actually brings it up. I have your money, I'll owe you back. And he's like, yes, give it to me now. Now? You want it now? What is it, 500 cents? It was 520 some. Why are you such a cheapskate? Sorry, sir. And you know, there's all this talk about money, and, you know, it's actually a good bit of comedy. But Edward brings up, you know what? I'll hang on to this 520 Cen. That's how they say it in the show. It's Cen. And he said, I'll hang on to this 520 Cen when you become, and I'll pay you back when you become Fuhrer. And, like, Roy's actually shocked about this and gives Edward a bit of an evil glance, like, you know, upset with him, saying, you know, where'd you hear that? He's like, Hawkeye told me, you know, she told me the whole thing. And, you know, it's like there's this understanding between each other, what both are trying to do now. And then, you know, he drops him off to the location, and he's like, you know what? I'll give you this 520 Cen back, and I'll give you it back with a little more, and then I'll ask for a little bit more back, and we'll give you a little bit more. So basically, it's this idea, and he says it's for, oh yeah, I forgot. He said it's for democracy, so it'll mean something. I prefer a republic, but hey.
Yep.
But, you know, basically it's saying when you become Fuhrer, as much as they're saying, you know, I'm going to keep taking money from you and, you know, oh my, the king will become poor. No, it's like, it's a funny thing saying when you become Fuhrer, I'll pay you back with interest because you'll do what's right for this country and you deserve it.
It's basically like a military man's way of saying, you know, this is your pledge to me that that you're going to make things better so that I can borrow more down the road.
Yes.
It's actually a really cute way of saying, you know, this is your promise not just to me but to our whole nation that once we do this, you're going to make things better so there will be more to borrow. It's actually, again, a really cute attention to detail on how military men speak and think.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, I have to admit, that's just fucking impressive.
And believe it or not, you know, when they get dropped off, they go back to their room where Old Man Fu is waiting in the darkness saying, "You're late." Like, God. Scares the crap out of both of them. We then hit the nighttime. They go back to Dr. Knox's house where he tells them, you know, that girl Mei Chang left. She didn't say where she was going, but she thanked him for everything he did for her. And believe it or not, like, Old Man Fu is there, and we see Old Man Fu basically scolding his granddaughter, Lan Fan, you know, not knowing the whole truth of it yet, but he's saying, how could you get yourself injured while protecting our prince and then lose our prince, you know, and he starts smacking her several times.
And he places special emphasis on your arm. It's really gone, and this probably wouldn't make as much sense unless you're really knowledgeable about, like, the Japanese Yakuza or the Chinese triads, because for you know, some of the older clan-based families, you know, like the old samurai daimyo clans, the Shinsengumi, and basically all the predecessors to these Asiatic large warrior-type families, losing your arm is one of the biggest disgraces you can suffer. It's hell, I think in the Yakuza families, as a punishment, if you really fuck up, if they don't kill you outright, they'll just chop off your hand or demand you give up one of your fingers. It's kind of a huge thing for you to lose one of your arms because, you know, it's seen as like being a cripple, being an invalid. It basically reduces your capability and station as an individual, especially in warrior-type families.
Yeah. Well, remember, I also think you sort of missed it there a little bit, Jared, because, yeah, he was upset at her, but I don't think he knew she lost the arm because he was in shock saying, wait, it's really gone. You're not making it up, Lan Fan. It's really gone. And then he starts saying, you fool, and he covers his face and saying, you fool, to which I picked up on. He's not saying you fool to her. He's saying you fool to himself, basically speaking in the third person, because if you guys remember, Old Man Fu's been going for all these episodes getting, Meredith Ross to Jing because she fell in trouble, and Old Man Fu led that expedition to get her there because they had to cross the desert. And, you know, so he's been gone this whole time, and, you know, he blames himself for saying, I should have been here for you, granddaughter. It's my fault. You lost the arm, basically.
Also, and this is just purely speculation on my point, I told Boku, I get the feeling there's almost a romantic aspect between his granddaughter and
Ling Yao.
Ling Yao, because again, like, losing your arm is a huge deal to them, and he even told her, when they're trying to escape from Bradley, not to do something so reckless. The fact that she cut off her arm of her own free will to buy them the time to escape, his reaction, it's almost like he recognizes that she's got feelings for him, and that, he's worried her having to give up this arm could diminish her chances if he actually succeeds. And it's kind of just really one of these sweet little things, because again, you notice, like, he doesn't refer to her as his subordinate, which, as kind of almost like ninja-like warrior he should be doing in the face of foreigners. No, he's calling her granddaughter. This kind of indicates that her mom and dad are probably dead, and she's the only family he's got, and he's, I would imagine he was even reticent to bring her along.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that she was wearing, like, the full mask, and he, went through most of his combat without it, to me is like, this is my one last living remaining heir. I don't want her to get hurt no matter what, and now she's lost her arm. Again, it's one of those Asian things, but you can see the concern. I mean, he's crying in front of foreigners. This is one of the more disciplined warriors we've seen in this show.
Yeah, and again, I can't remember if they say anything or not, so that's actually a good point, Jarek. I'd never really even considered that, so I mean, that is a good point. But I guess it also harkens back to what happens next, because believe it or not, Old Man Fu and Lan Fan thank, Nox again. Nox is getting embarrassed, actually upset that he's getting based. Well, stop thanking me. I didn't do much for it. You don't have to worry about it. Hey. And then that'll actually play into something here in just a second. But believe it or not, Edward and Alphonse say, don't you want to meet up with our automail mechanic? And Old Man Fu's like, no, we can't do that. And they're like, well, why not? She can help you out in a jiff. He's like, we'll find our own. The thing is, the enemy saw Lan Fan's face. Wherever we go, they could be watching us, and we'd put your friend in danger. We're not going to do that. We will go out on our own and find it. So basically, they pack up their stuff, leave the Nox house, as does Edward and Alphonse. Believe it or not, though, while Old Man Fu and Lan Fan are leaving, little cliche because it's happened in shows before, but Lan Fan says, to Ling Yao, just in the air, but also to their enemies, fare thee well, Prince. We will be back, and for the enemies of this nation, we will be back for you to take care and finish this business. So they walk away, and believe it or not, there's actually a long shot where Greed and or Ling Yao, whoever it could be at the time, was just out watching over, the horizon. So whether he heard it or not, hey, but just that idea of, like Jarek was saying, the connection between the two, obviously.
And another interesting small detail you would really have to be balls deep in Asiatic culture to understand. Her grandfather, like the suit and the hat he's wearing, it seems like such an insignificant detail, but like older Asiatic gentlemen from that time period, when they were in foreign countries and wanted to look like they were acclimating to the culture, be it either for personal or business reasons, that's actually the kind of suit and hat they would wear. And strangely enough, there was a character in Fatal Fury Wild Ambition on the PS1 who dressed exactly like that.
Yeah. Which I didn't know about the Fatal Fury part, but hey.
And hey, if you watch the anime, I believe, what's his name, Yubei Yamada also had a tendency to dress like that as well when he was in foreign countries. So
hey,
another interesting culture shock.
So there's the star going across the screen right there.
The more you know.
Absolutely. And then, believe it or not, which to me this was the best part of the episode, a small detail episode, but also giving hope to Dr. Nox here. Like, Nox is sitting on the couch thinking about all the stuff about how Mei Chang and Lan Fan thanked him. But before that, though, he's thinking of, obviously, the Ishvalan War, which we see a quick thing where it looks like he's experimenting on corpses, so he was probably also involved in a lot of that terrible stuff, in Ishval. I don't know how he wasn't killed, but probably maybe because he was lower on the rung that they left him alone or thought he wasn't a threat. But obviously he had been a part of a lot of that terrible stuff too. And just thinking about it, and this is why maybe he's thinking he can't be forgiven because, I'm too dirty, I've been doing this too long. Believe it or not, though, there's a knock at the door. He's like, yeah, what do you want? Who could it be? Oh. And then, it's his son, and, yeah, it's his wife. And believe it or not, he's saying, well, how you doing, Dad? Oh, I'm good, you've gotten older, I see. And he's like, yeah, so have you. And it's like, my ex-wife, you've lost weight. Oh, well, you're still looking good, too, honey. And, they're talking, and he's like, well, believe it or not, I actually, I'm still going through corpses, as you know, but I actually helped some people, believe it or not. And then I always thought it was a little weird, but it's actually, I think for them, they were happy because they know that their husband was dealing with a lot of pain, because I actually bring up during this conversation that they know what he did in the Ishmael War. He obviously told them.
And it's really sweet, too, because the son's like, I think it's in the English version where he says this, like, I know you think, you could never really be forgiven for all you did, but even so, you never gave up on being a doctor. I'm so proud of you. It's like, I wanted to come here and tell you, I want to be a doctor, too. And yeah. I just love how, beforehand he says, come on, get in here. It's not any gourmet shit, but I'll make you some coffee. And as he's pouring the coffee, he's again crying. He's like, God, I know I don't deserve it, but just let me be selfish enough to be happy for this little moment. And it's such a touching scene because people focus a lot on the PTSD the soldiers had, but honestly, some of the worst PTSD was from the medics. Having to patch people up, losing patients, even knowing that some of the research they did may have been used in the crimes, and also, probably more than a few of them live with the guilt because, weird fact, penicillin was first developed for use by the military exclusively. It was only after it proved successful in the war that it was allowed to be developed for the private sector. And it was solely given to the military just to see if soldiers could get healthier faster to get back on the battlefield. And frankly, a lot of shit was like that. The microwave oven was like that, for instance. Jiffy Pop, I think, first got developed for the military to speed up the time for eating and whatnot. But again, it's another interesting callback. Like, this guy probably was either involved with, the pre-development into a plot point coming up in a few minutes, and he probably just didn't quite have the talent, or maybe he was involved with, the post-research to see if it could be adapted to the corpses, which sounds ridiculous, but again, we talked about Mr. War Crimes and what he did in China, so... Oh, and that part might also be coming back soon.
You mean China? You mean, not in China? Well, the real life connection. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm like Kimberly killed them in Ishmael, not in Jing. But then you're making the real life comparison.
But it's right. Again another cute, interesting thing how she really paid attention to. Yeah, the soldiers have a lot, left over from the war, but the doctors, it's one of the worst pains. And if you want a great example, there was an interesting character in Sergeant Rock and Easy Company who wasn't just the team medic. He was also a devout Catholic priest, and he suffered in that comic series. If you ever find the old Sergeant Rock comics, buy them up now. And also, just a weird thing to mention, I actually had 3 medics in my family, believe it or not. My grandfather, my grandmother, and my dad. Yeah, he was an Air Force medic in Vietnam. So, kind of a weird thing for me, especially considering I hate doctors.
Well, hey, when in Rome, as they say, Jerick. But believe it or not, after that nice scene, it actually does go to Solve J. Kimberly, where we actually get a quick flashback of him, in the jail cell. He has a Philosopher's Stone in his hand. Don't know how he got it, but we sort of find out how. He's talking with the generals. They're giving him praise with what he was able to do. and they're happy how he was able to exterminate these Thalans, and they're wanting him to write it down in a report. One of the generals says, though, we'll take the Philosopher's Stone off your hand, and he's like, no. And, he basically eats it, and then...
And again, another weird delineation between the English and the Japanese. Like, the Japanese don't really say it as well, but in the English version, they're like, oh, and of course with your report, we'll have to take the stone as well. And he kind of says, like, so, I take it then, from the conclusion of this report, that you five are the only ones who know I have the stone. And then he just annihilates them, and you see him kind of, like, pretend to swallow it. Which, again, is kind of another neat touch. Like, Kimberly might be a genocidal maniac and an asshole, but he's smart enough to realize that, yeah, these five are probably the only ones who know I got the stone, and the significance of it. Boom. Mine now.
Yeah. Well, I know it was a little bit more straightforward in the Japanese, but, to me, that wasn't that different. Because, they said it was just a little more emphasized differently in English, but, in both versions, they said it pretty much.
Plus, we also get to see the alchemist marks on his hands, and I looked this up. It was the marks for gold and silver, which is kind of another neat little touch. Cause,
sun and the moon, yeah.
Yeah, the sun and the moon, and gold, which delineate to gold and silver, which is kind of another interesting nod to real life alchemy, because Western alchemy, which is oftentimes called the alchemy of greed. What was it for? To turn baser metals into the most precious of metals, gold. And, to do so by creating a philosopher's stone. And, also, again, it's kind of a neat thing where it's like, if you're really familiar with the ins and outs of metallurgy or finance, you would understand that gold is kind of just, valuable because it's quote-unquote valuable. It's kind of useless otherwise, and it's difficult to work with. And frankly, it doesn't even make for good weaponry or tools. But silver, on the other hand, that shit's used in a lot of construction. It's got more practical uses. And even from a mystical standpoint, it's still more useful than gold.
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, it's kind of another interesting, neat little touch.
Yep. Well, why not? Also, plus, both of them have been synonymous in lore of, chaos, destruction, peace, serenity.
Plus, it also kind of reminded me of Scar, because the sun and the moon are, very opposing, diametrically opposed symbols. The sun is seen as giving life. It's a holy symbol. It's a thing of purity. The moon, on the other hand, is seen as a symbol of madness, corruption, insanity. And, one is death, one is life. And what did we hear from Scar's brother? He had those two long sets of tattoos, one for decomposition, one for creating life. Mm-hmm. Life and death.
Yep. So, again, the whole thing of his brother and himself, good in a way. Kimberly, friggin' just, I'm evil to the core. And obviously, he gets a release. He's actually, he's not as shocked by this. He's a little shocked, but he gets released. The prison guard, you can probably tell the people at the prison are not on the take, because they're actually saying, one of the guards will be saying how, I don't know who would release you. You're a psychopath. You killed your commanders. We don't know how or why yet, but the fact of being released after what you did, we don't understand this. But the guard actually goes, I hope to never see you again. While he's right at the gates, though, I don't know why the guard would do this, considering they know he's got those damn symbols on his hand. But Kimberly puts it out to a shake to saying, you were great, watching over me, take care, and I want to say thank you. And he says, yeah, I hope I never see you again. Shakes his hand. Kimberly turns his watch, and it looks like what's sort of a bomb thing, because there's a clock ticking down. And then all the other guards are freaking out. He's freaking out, saying, Kimberly, don't do this to me. And then as soon as the whole clock goes to a minute, it pops up, and there's this, cuckoo clock duck that comes out of it. And he's saying, it's a harmless child's toy. You can give it to your kid or something. And then just walks away, scaring the crap out of the guy for no good reason. Believe it or not, though, got into the car because a soldier waved him over. But guess who? it's Envy in disguise, who basically wastes no time for a quick second becoming his original face before going back into the soldier, and then saying, "We need you for a little operation. Marco may be dead, but he may not be dead, but we may have to have you go get him." And he's saying, "Oh, so you're really desperate, huh? This must be a big thing that you really need me for." "Well, the thing is, it may have been an Ishvalan that got him out." "I don't like one that could escape me on my watch. I'll do this for you because I have to account for everybody." And it's basically the sick conversation of how, just like he wants to eliminate all Ishvalans, and how it seemed, we discovered that through their conversation, Kimberly knew the entire time.
Yeah, and
that the homunculi and father were involved.
And also, they kind of imply it better in English that they know that it was Scar who did it.
Yeah.
And of course, he's probably well aware of the fact of Scar's significance. It's the only guy who could have fought back was his brother. And also, he's like, but he kind of tells Envy, it's like, "You guys didn't really spring me just to, hunt down one dirty Ishvalan, did you?" It's like, "Of course not. We want you to destroy an entire town, to make a message. But you're probably going to need a little extra firepower for that." So he gives him another stone. And this is kind of a neat thing, because Boku was the one who brought this up. It's like, I didn't know which town he was talking about, but considering, it was Marco who escaped, he was thinking it's either going to be, the city Winry's in, or town, or Marco's hometown.
Yeah.
And it's sickening to think about, but shit like this happens all the fucking time.
Well, and again, and this is where the episode ends, but oh wait, actually I forgot there was one more thing, but to put the final note on it, is that, in Japanese, they say, well, just destroy any town on the way back, to test it out because, hey, why not chaos? But in English, they sort of take, that any town and emphasize, make it Marco's town since he did this escape attempt, and we warned him if he did anything stupid, that town would pay the price. So in English, we brought it back to a plot point, where in Japanese, it's more generalized. They could have been probably meaning the same town, but it was more generalized in Japanese, where in this one, Envy, Wendy Powell basically says, yeah, destroy the town, that we have this town we want you to destroy. So basically making an emphasis that, because Marco escaped, once they get him back, Marco's going to know we destroyed that town and killed everybody he liked there.
And there's also another interesting little thing I noticed with this. When Fu Long's grandfather is leaving the city, he's wearing a more traditional brownish black suit, with a nice dark topped off hat. Because, usually that's seen as being the more proper attire for a man. You wear it at weddings, you wear it to funerals. Kimberly, on the other hand, who we know has, elements of Asiatic descent in him, what's he wearing? He's wearing a full white suit with a white hat.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't get the reference, in Asiatic culture, white is associated with evil and death. Hell, you could look at that guy Muzan in Demon Slayer. Looks like Michael Jackson, wears all white. You've been you've been stuck by a smooth criminal.
Yep, but, basically, again, because white is usually looked at in Western cultures as pure, but from what you said there, what does white also represent in some horror movies and other Eastern and Middle Eastern cultures and stuff like that, lifelessness and complete death.
To give it an even more relevant comparison, Bleach. You got the Soul Society, which is all about protecting the boundaries of life and death. They wear all black. What do the Arankar, who live in Hakemundo, who are all obsessed about waging war and causing death, wear? They wear white.
And that's a great sort of comparison. And I also forgot to. I think this is how it ended. If not, we sort of got it mixed up. But I remembered there was a scene we missed here. But yeah, it was right before that. So yeah, there was one scene we missed. Basically, Roy, after also dropping off the Elrics and seeing all that stuff at Dr. Knox, Roy Mustang goes to this one. I'm gonna say it's a burlesque house, but there's this whole house with women, and there's a bar. And, you know, like, there's a girl, Vanessa, who likes him, but then there's also this one elderly lady named Madam Christmas. Goes up to Madam Christmas, wants a drink, and Madam Christmas is like, well, what can I do for you, honey? Well, I'm actually feeling a little bit more of a stronger drink, something that'll send me a message. And then he unfolds the paper. Madam Christmas sees it, and she's like, oh, so that's the kind of drink you want. So basically, this is the beginning, and I remember I told you guys a little preview of it a while ago. But yeah, this is where Roy Mustang's harem of women, if you want to look at it, come into play, to where they're his secret spies. And believe it or not, Madam Christmas calls Grumman, which, you know, the soldiers are a little like, Commander Grumman, really? You know, you're having those special call things, and it's like, well, Madam Christmas knows me well, and I know how to serve her well too.
You know, and I love how in English he's like, heh, even at my old age, the ladies still come a calling for
oh yeah,
Mr.
I forgot
Grumman. That's
what he says. Yeah,
and it's also again another interesting real life callback to World War II, and some of you FGO players know where this is going. Mata Hari, the caster of love, who, by the way, is totally not that bouncy in real life. Yeah, she was a little on the flatter side, but yeah, Madam Hari, you know, using women of the night as spies, not exactly a new idea. Isn't that right, Konoichi of ancient Japan?
Well, hey, but you know, that's basically the whole episode for this one, and believe it, and yeah, if I didn't say the title, yeah, it was 31, the 520 cents promise. I believe I did, but just in case I didn't. And for this one, it was yeah, basically for this one, it's going to be on a little bit of a different thing. I would have to say, I mean, everybody was good in it again, just to say, I'm not going to list off everybody again, because there were some performances that were better than others, but everybody did their jobs well. But I have to say, there were two that really stood out to me in this one, and the two people, and I guarantee Jarek probably knows who I'm going to call here, but my first one I have, oh, wait, we're not done yet, I forgot. Near the very end, because I forgot I wrote it down here, and I'm not checking my notes thoroughly enough. Yes, basically Mei Chang returns to Scar and Lieutenant Yoki. They're with Dr. Marco, and believe it or not, like, to go through it quick, basically, because I know we've gone a little long in the tooth here again, but, you know, basically Scar tells Mei Chang the truth about Marco, saying he's the one who created the Philosopher's Stone. Mei Chang gets all desperate, wanting Marco to make a Philosopher's Stone. Marco, as you can imagine, is refusing, so no thing there. Believe it or not, Scar actually says, you don't want to have that, you don't know what it's capable of. And believe it or not, in a funny way, I can understand why Scar did it. You could also tell he was in his vengeance phase, but he basically...
Well, also a little bit before that, he says that part of the reason he saved him is he wants him to translate his brother's notes on
his brother's notes, yes.
Because there must be, you know, maybe there's a weakness they can use in the battles to come. Because he's still remembering that, his arm basically did damn near nothing against Father. So this is actually pretty cool where both Scar and the Elrics both come at the same idea from different angles.
Yes.
But in order to protect him, he's like, the enemy knows who you are, we're not going to be able to travel safely, so he basically uses his arm of destruction and just obliterates like the top layer of his face so that he'll be difficult to recognize, and then he tells Mei Chang, you can stop the bleeding, can't you? And I mean, it's brutal, and for God's sakes, have someone cover her eyes while you do that shit.
Well, I don't think Yoki or Mei Chang knew he was going to do that, and it's just like, you know, the fact that it's like, you know, oh, this is the best way that we can do it. And I don't mean to, like, ruin it, but if I remember, I think Marco doesn't mind that he did it, because he's like, this is the most that I deserve, given the lives I've killed.
Yeah.
So, I could sort of understand it. Even with me, again, if you guys haven't seen the whole thing like I have, and I believe Jarek has seen Brotherhood 2 all the way through, but my thing is that, it's still brutal, and I still don't like how Scar did it, but again, Scar is starting to slowly change. He's not given up on this idea of vengeance yet, but he's starting to slowly change, but the vengeance is still pretty much there, because that was pretty brutal what he did. Yeah. Again, like Jarek said, made sense, but holy shit, man.
And you might think it would be impossible for someone to stay awake while literally having the top 2 layers of skin blasted off their face, but I can assure you, the pain inside that he was suffering from what he did in the war was probably far worse than any of that.
I assure you, he probably was going into shock, though, with what happened to his face. I wouldn't doubt that.
And it's not completely out of the realm of possibility, because, I mean, I know of people who have had a video camera shoved up their nose, down their esophagus, punched through a layer of cartilage between your throat and between your throat and the rest of your esophagus, down all the way into their lower digestive system, stayed awake, and only threw up once while that happens. It can be done.
Okie dokie, that was a little TMI for me, but other than that, thank you, Jarek.
Little strangely specific, you might even say.
Yes, very, very. But either way, getting back to the characters, but yeah, I wanted to mention that too, because we almost forgot that was an important plot point. So, all signs point to north, but for that's how the episode ended. And, but yeah, getting back to it, I have to say, because, I mean, there probably would be more than 2, but these 2 characters stood out to be the most, which is why there's 2 this time. I have to give it to, where is he, where are you? I know you were actually higher on the, there it is. Dr. Knox, R. Bruce Elliott, Kinryu Arimoto. Again, he was just great, that just angsty old man, the bitter old man, but then when the family comes calling, that emotion he gave out with his son, the sadness, the pain, everything. Again, I know I'm a simp for English, but R. Bruce Elliott, I think, sold it out of the park.
Oh my God, yeah.
I want to make sure I have his name right. Kinryu Arimoto did a great job too, but that was, and I mean, it was very heartfelt. Both me and Jarek can attest. I think we were both tearing up with that scene last night. But hell, I'm tearing up just thinking about it right now.
Still
but like, I can see her wiping her eyes.
Man tears.
And you can hear where I'm choking up a bit. But, so that was a very powerful scene. For the sinisterness, and this is why I have to give it to him. Oh, man. You were higher on. Yes, Kimberly. Soph J. Kimberly. Eric Vale, Hiroyuki Yoshino. Again. And I would say it was a tie for the 2, because both in Japanese and English, the characters seemed very deliciously vicious and evil, just a psychopath through and through, a man who does not care at all what he does, how he does it, the fact he even says, there was an Ishvalan who got away with me, I have to correct that. I will correct the Ishvalan. And then anyone who tries to correct me, I shall correct them.
And I remember you telling me, it's like, man, hard to believe this guy was playing Trunks.
Yeah, well, again, because Eric Vale, if you guys are familiar with the name, another show I know he's done more than Full Metal Alchemist and Dragon Ball, but he's also known probably for this and for Dragon Ball the most. And he's usually the voice of Trunks. It basically is the same voice as Trunks. It's just, imagine Trunks, but very, very evil.
Or hey, maybe if Salad Sane and some of those other guys are listening, Trunks if he was raised by Frieza.
That would be an interesting thing if he decided to kidnap Trunks at some point, which could be a possibility. But hey.
But I have to, me and Boku are A1 on this one. I mean, Kimberly, just good lord, man, no shit's given, and I love how he words everything he says with like this, I'm doing this to correct and protect my war record or something like that.
Yeah.
Which again, man, full psychopath there, Mr. Vale. Good job.
Yeah.
And as for Knox, this hurts me and... God damn it, not again. I had a friend who had the same problem. He was in World War II, Vietnam, and Korea. And Mom, if you're watching this, I doubt you are, but lay off the man. He wanted to spend time with his children. He never forgave himself for not being able to be there. And honestly, I noticed the happiest I ever saw him was when I went over to visit him and listened to his war stories. I love you, Albert. Stay safe. Semper Fi.
I don't mean to use the Twin Peaks thing here, Jared, because, I mean, I know it's more for you than it is for me, but I have to say, is this going to happen every damn time? I'm not saying it to be a jerk. I'm just saying it was there, and I was even thinking... Since this was a sad moment, I'm like, if you tear up again, I have to say it in the Twin Peaks ways. It's going to happen every damn time.
It might, but, that's kind of a funny thing.
But no, I understand how that gets you. I mean, I get it, dude.
It really shows you how well she nailed every aspect of this story.
Well, again...
Except for maybe the stuff about guns, but other than that.
Well, and again, her political stuff is... But
to show... her showing how much humanity soldiers really have. Because, again, I know people just want to say, you're just... you go to war, you do these things, you're just a monster. No, it really harkens back to the idea that the people who have the most respect for life are the ones who live the closest to the edge of death all the time. And honestly, once you see that shit, it stays with you forever. You never forget it. When you lose family members, when you work at hospitals, when you're a soldier, when you're there when a friend dies, right when they die, it never leaves you. You never go back to good after that.
Well,
there's
all the way, but there's always an emptiness.
There's just varying degrees of you get better over time.
Yes.
And Dr. Knox really nailed that aspect, so good on you. Again, Jesus, man, this show.
Well, again, because, I mean, given what you just mentioned right there, as hard as that was to bring you up, that's probably what happened to her, because it seems like she knew people, or at least researched with people, or maybe even had family members that went through terrible times thanks to this. So this probably came from her heart as well. Like I said, I can understand and I get it. But again, do you and I fully agree on her politics on the matter? No, because we could see where there probably is some this with her. But, again, you can understand it because... Believe me, I didn't think about this the first time I watched Brotherhood with Davis. There probably is some of this too as well in the original too, but you can probably see where Hiromu Arikawa, because Amestria is based on, obviously I'm going to say Germany and probably the Nazis and dealing with, everything that they went through, because again, the part of Amestria, which was, the Ishvalans, Poland, and all that stuff, and then all the stuff, the soldiers dealing with the guilt, the people, and just the evilness of it, which, again, you can understand, because that's what she was basing off of it, too. And again, that's where she probably got some of her politics for, is that this is what they believe, and why I said how she's sort of solving some of these problems. I agree with some of it in a way, but in others, I'm like, I get it, well, but...
And it's another weird thing, and I know this is, again, something you would only pick up on if you're part of certain cultures and live in certain areas, but I love how the suit Fu Long's grandfather is wearing, even right down to the hat, which, by the way, is probably the exact same brand I'm wearing, a Dorfman Pacific hat. It's kind of weird how older, elderly Asian men and, strangely enough, Hispanic and South American men have very similar tastes in that kind of attire. The nice full-piece button-up 3-piece suit with the nice hat. it's kind of a weird thing to realize that there are, even, if these two groups of people never interact, they strangely have a lot of interesting customs and little quirks that kind of carry over. It's kind of like the same with, if you've ever met African refugees from like the Sudan, the boys of Nantinga as they're called, they strangely enough have a lot of words that carry over with Cantonese Spanish. And also they have very similar taste in food. I used to babysit a couple of these kids, and my mom made the joke to them. It's like, Bach, you would make a great Hispanic. He's like, no, Mama Tina, I am African. I mean, it's a cute thing, but sometimes you just notice these weird little correlations.
Yeah, and I mean that's how it can connect. But I mean, either way. With final thoughts on the episode, a good one, I love how it moves things forward. I love how the goals are becoming way more clear now for each of the characters, and I love how we're getting to the next goal and where it's going to go. And basically that's where it's headed. All the roads are starting to intersect again.
Different people, different factions, different plans, but it's all going in the same direction.
Yep, and I was going to say, probably the other part we could say is that the villains are getting desperate to try to get the plan back on track because they realize sort of falling apart a little bit, but we're going to have to make a few points to get it back on track. But hey. But anyway, these are our thoughts. What are yours? Let us know in the comment section down below. Just let us know what you're thinking of it so far. And or, again, if you've even seen any part of Fullmetal Alchemist yet, but just let us know. But until then, this is 012 Boku, and...
This is the Jackass of Hearts, Jarek.
Yep, and we will see you later. Deuces.